piece was going. I was vibing a little bit. I was get a little beat there. Welcome everyone to today's episode of The Crunch. I am David Mario Smith, and I have a special guest today. I have a journalist reporter, which is Moshe. Moshe, is that how you pronounce your name, brother?
That is correct, brother. That is correct.
Welcome, my friend. Welcome. So, what's the origin or the history of your name, by the way?
So the name is Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
So the name is Hebrew. I'm Jewish, Israeli, and American both.
Mm-hmm.
The English is Moses, or in Spanish, Moses.
Right.
Yeah.
And speaking of Spanish, you are based in.
Yeah. I live in Mexico because my wife is Mexican. I came here on vacation, and two things I said I was never going to do: stay in a place and get married, and I did both.
The rest is history, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. You have the most cultured background ever, right?
I haven't been afraid to just go.
Yeah.
I think after university, I went to university in the States, and I said, all right, I'm done. I'm just going
You
to.
done?
I mean, it was a good experience, to live there for any period of time in the United States, to, take advantage of that experience. And I
Yeah,
can
yeah.
always go back. I can live there. I can, go to sort of any country that I want to live in,
Hmm,
right?
hmm.
And I've
Yeah.
chosen Mexico as my home, and I think Mexico more chose me, but yeah, that's a different story.
Sometimes that's what happens. It's so funny. Like I've always said, in my travel, especially for work, being an analyst, one
Hmm.
of the places or the parts of the world I've always loved, and so I'm Jamaican, born in Jamaica, been in the States since I was like 7. But so there's there's a culture in Latin America that is so familiar to me, right? It's
Yeah,
so very familiar, coming from the Caribbean, right?
yeah,
And I remember going there, for work and doing sales calls, and I remember, by in the morning it's like handshake, but
uh-huh,
by noon it's a hug, by eventime you're at dinner at someone's house, it's just a
uh-huh,
very
100%.
welcoming, hospitable, culture.
100%. Uh-huh. I think that's one of the best parts for me. I mean, one time I was walking, and this was when I first moved here, so my Spanish was really pretty terrible. And I thought a lady was like, "You need to clean up your dog's poop because I'm going to call the police." And I'm just thinking, obviously I'm going to clean it up. Just give me a moment, calm down,
Yeah.
And then she started like yelling, and I went to get my wife, who was still asleep because it's very early, and she's like, this lady is not really, crazy. Maybe you're more crazy than she is. And we ended up at her house for dinner and many other times, and just
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so ridiculous. I mean, now my Spanish is much better, obviously, but um, you know, very different culturally the experiences.
Right, right. Oh my goodness. So you are a journalist, you're a reporter,
Uh
and
huh.
you've been, sort of working this beat, looking at the channel and so forth.
Uh huh.
How give us a little background, I guess, on your career as a journalist.
So I studied journalism, public relations, and I worked in public relations in Tel Aviv for a number of years for tech
Mm.
startups and not non-startups. Big conglomerates or corporations like Viber or Rakuten. I'm sure they've changed their name again or something.
Yeah.
I haven't been following the organization for a while. But I did that for a number of years, and I was just like, man, I really hate this. I tried to do like other things in public relations, and I asked my boss. I said, hey, do you mind if I just start doing content?
Hmm.
I'll just write for these executives. Make it look like them, make them look smart, pass the points
Yeah.
by them, and say, is this good, or is this what you were talking about?
Right.
Half the time, it's kind of just like, yeah, let's run with it. It's like, okay, yeah, okay. Anyway, I mean, I think it was well thought out. It was well planned, things like that, right?
Mm.
I had a contact who worked at an insurance publication. She's the editor in chief there, still to this day. And I was thinking about quitting my job, which I did shortly after I started realizing that like I could probably do something else, work from home, have more flexibility, live wherever I want to
Hmm.
live. So I like left Tel Aviv. I went to Haifa, the north of Israel, and that was, you know,
Yeah.
obviously a wonderful place, obviously, and more chill.
Hmm.
And so, long story short, I just kind of like started doing journalism. I mean, not very casual, right? I mean, it was technology journalism, but it was like insurance technology. I already had a
Yeah.
really extensive background in technology, and journalism was something that I had been doing on the periphery, having studied it and having done it in university, etc. So kind of just happened based on having that connection, right? It's always a connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't applied for a job in like 10 years because it's just been connections. That's the truth. I mean, truly, it's just been connection. So that's
Yeah,
how it
yeah.
started. I'm pretty sure you asked other things, and I haven't answered the question
No, no,
exactly.
no. You're right. Yeah, but so with that, how has I guess your career or tech journalism itself evolved over the past few years?
Well, I got my first reporting job. Oh gosh, I don't know how long ago it was. Um, More than 6 or 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like as a freelancer, but I was writing 40, 50 articles a month sometimes for a publication called UC Today. They have since
Mm-hmm.
grown, and they are pretty massive. And then I went over to a different publication and actually was running the show there for over a year. And then COVID,
Mm-hmm.
budget cuts, etc., things like that. But that went very well. And I think the one thing that I can say is that all my editors or superiors or bosses or whatever you want to call them, they have been really well receptive to my work. Good
Mm-hmm.
feedback on both ends. We have good communication. They say
Yeah,
this deadline, then I'm going to probably give it to them earlier. Or
yeah.
I'm a fan of setting my own deadlines so that they don't have to tell me, this is when you need.
Right.
It's like I understand the urgency of this. I'll get this to you within the next. And we've worked together on a number of stories
Mm-hmm.
at Channel Futures, which is where I currently am. However, I'm going to be leaving in November, at the end of November.
Yeah.
Just various reasons. Nothing bad. I should clarify. It's a matter of budgeting and so on in the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
So the hope is to hopefully get back there again in the first quarter. But in the meantime, got to pay those bills, and you know
Indeed.
I'm on the look. I'm on the hunt right now. Dusted off that CV today for the first time in a while. But it's
Right,
good
right.
to take a look and to be humbled by that. So thankfully, I've been in a position
Absolutely.
to save money, and my wife has a job. She's an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
So we are fine. But
Yeah,
still.
yeah. Time times are changing, and so actually, so talk about that a little bit. What are the biggest challenges you face? I guess in sort of keeping up with the rapid pace, of tech advancements
Uh-huh.
and just just the growth of journalism in tech.
Well, I think one of the biggest things is like there's a lot of misinformation, so just cutting through the noise. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, for every piece of accurate information, I think I find something like 4 to 5, totally just like you know terrible sources, that are just
Yeah,
citing some Wikipedia page that was written by, a bear 15 years ago. I don't know. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
it's really cutting through the noise. I mean, that's been incredibly, I wouldn't say difficult, but I think that
Mm-hmm.
that has, if you cite a bad source, which you try not to do, and if you're experienced, you won't do it. Um,
Yeah,
and some of that stuff, with deep fakes and so on, and that stuff can get a little tricky, right? So, I mean,
yeah,
I guess
yeah.
it's just like more knowing what you're looking for, not having this continual feedback loop of people who are giving you the ideas that you want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Those things can be really incredibly challenging as well because you need to challenge yourself with new ideas, new people, new thoughts, right? So,
Yeah.
um, and then you just have the rate at which technology is just like it's being pumped out, man.
Mm-hmm.
And not everybody's being transparent. Not all these companies are
Right.
being transparent. Obviously, I mean, it's within their best interest to a certain extent. But if you can sweep it under the rug and you don't have to answer my question, then
Yeah.
so I'll do it, and then I'll reach out to you when the story fits, when it's good for me, when it's going to be something what I would call a sexy story, right? There's no such thing as good news. Um, it's just all news for me, and that's
Right,
why
right.
my job is to just, here's what happened, here's possibly
Mm-hmm.
potentially why it happened based on these experts who have, basically, studied this for a number of years and continue to study it and continue to research it. So people like
Yeah,
you.
and it's funny too because like how has AI guess and automation impacted the way you gather and report on tech?
Um, it virtually has not changed anything for me. I mean, I hardly use AI. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I know it's there. It's assisting in there. I just had WhatsApp open. I just, their AI, Meta AI, it's there.
Yeah.
It's weird to see it there because it used to be, private, not privately owned, but not owned by Meta, and just kind of feels like one of those other platforms I'm going to leave soon. Anyway, um, I think it hasn't changed
It's
anything.
become a cesspool of disinformation. I know what you mean.
Yeah, well, it hasn't changed anything for me, man. I mean, I think it's the same. I gather information the same. I mean, there's a lot of information, a lot of data. So as I said earlier,
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's a matter of like, you know, knowing who the source is, what their motivations are, who sponsored
Mm-hmm.
that. If it's a contact center survey sponsored that's all favorable toward contact center providers, sponsored by the International Contact Center.
Yeah.
Maybe to a certain extent that data it can be leveraged, but you need to be careful about what, because if it's like contact centers are the best, and it's like 100% of respondents is, well,
Yes.
if you ask customers that, for instance, they're not going to say the same thing. So I think it's a
Right.
matter of
Right.
where you get your information, how you vet it, and who you look to say, hey, which direction would I be looking at if I were trying to understand more about this thing.
Right. And so, how do you balance, I guess, the need for accuracy and timeliness in your reporting?
Accuracy and time. I one. You can't cancel out one for the other. I think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can be quick,
Yeah.
but for me, being the first is not the most important thing. Being the most
Mm-hmm.
accurate, being someone who has a story that is more uniquely written. I never rewrite a press release. I will take obviously things from a press release because that's going to be hopefully accurate based on what the company
Yeah.
is about, right? If something is not clear, I clarify with that company. I give them the chance to comment. Usually they don't, or they say we have no further comment, or they don't say anything. If it's a tip from a source who says, "Hey, by the way, this company just did this and everybody's pissed off about it," well, okay, well, probably they don't want to comment. If they're really transparent and thinking about getting ahead, then
Mm-hmm.
I think they will comment.
Yeah.
So I guess I can say, one doesn't really necessarily need to be sacrificed for the other, in my opinion. I mean, you can have
Yeah.
accuracy and timeliness and still have a unique story that has more views, page views, etc., than
Yeah.
the story published on, the Wall Street Journal, because you have the more unique angle.
Mm-hmm. And I guess too, and how much of that, and you mentioned this before, or sort of alluded to it, how much of it is that keeping your sort of Rolodex, I guess, of experts, of people that you go to, for information and for data.
I would imagine that everybody on who's on this stream right now knows what a Rolodex is. It's really, I don't have one. I don't have one. It's all here now. It's all digital. It's all here.
That's from a year gone by. Yeah. It's old school.
That's so funny. There are still people who have those things. You know, I have so many contacts. I mean, just after so many years of doing this, there are some go-to people who I know who will respond. Like you, I'll email you and you'll say, "I know I'm doing something, but it's a great opportunity for me to get my name out there for my company.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's my expertise at the end of the day, right? I know what I'm talking about, so why not leverage my knowledge and say, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I'm David Smith. I know how to position this, topic or what have you, and I have, hundreds of other analysts and other sources from the vendor side to the partner side.
Yeah.
Um, and I count on those people, even people within companies who say, "Hey, I'm not supposed to be saying this, but I don't think that this is a great thing. So let's talk off the record. You can use any of this information,
Yeah, yeah.
but don't use my name." And so stuff like that. And
Yeah,
that's really, really important. That integrity. That they trust me, and I trust that they are not. They're being honest with me as well.
yeah, and that's probably that currency, right? You have that currency of trust between even with you and I, right? You'll come
hundred
to me
percent,
for stories of that. You also go to your other sources as well too, and that currency of trust is super important.
100%. I mean, it cannot be broken. I would never lie to you. You should never lie
Mm-hmm.
to me. We should always be honest with each other. Um, so there is a such thing as a non-story. I mean, if
Yeah,
somebody comes to me and they get mad because I don't publish something, it's like, well, I mean, I'm sorry, it's just not interesting. It's not news. It's
yeah,
just a feature, and already your competitors have already done something like that. And sometimes a company, they do something with a really interesting partner angle, and they know how to package it. I ignore a lot of
yeah,
emails. I do. I mean, and it's not me being rude or anything. It's just
yeah,
if I answered every email that I got, I would answer the 7,000 spam emails that I have and have to delete on a daily basis, just asking a very basic question that humans can just, with a little bit of research, you would know that I'm not the contact for that. So it's just like have your
yeah,
targeting down and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of
yeah,
frustrating things, but
yeah. So, what's your take right now on the state of tech journalism? What do you see?
the state of what? I'm sorry.
Tech journalism. What do you see right now?
There's a lot of change, man. There's a lot of turnover. I mean, conglomerates are buying other conglomerates, and things are happening,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I mean, I think the people who are doing that work are really, really, really good at their jobs. They believe in
Mm-hmm.
accuracy. They believe in good storytelling. They believe in creative writing. They know how to write in the journalistic formula. I mean, I'm saying it like
Mm-hmm.
it's a mathematical equation, but there's a certain way that you need to write, including sort of redundant or asinine information. It's kind of like, well, that was not
Yeah.
necessary to say that or to do this. Um, I think everybody who's in I can't speak for everybody, but most of the people who I know are doing really, really good work and being creative writers and
Mm-hmm.
researchers and crunching numbers, and they have spreadsheets open, and we're reading these 15, 60, and 200-page reports sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that might be for a 600-word story, but we have to do it. We have to do our due
Right.
diligence. So, you talked about accuracy and time and things like that. Well, I can skim a report. I can go and see, oh, what are these numbers? I can search, page search and things like that. But at the end of the day, if there's conflicting information in the report, I'm just cherry picking. I can't really just cherry pick. You need to really understand the
Indeed.
substance of that report instead of
Right.
just choosing random data that will essentially fit the narrative um, of what maybe you're trying to achieve, which I wouldn't do,
Right. Right.
because there is no narrative. The narrative is what's the truth, and that's it.
Yeah, it's so funny. Coming from an analyst background, right? My major was I was a marketing major, right?
Uh huh.
But now being an analyst, I sometimes do columns for like a CIO,
Uh
.com
huh.
and so forth. And so I'm being I guess a quasi journalist, I guess
Uh huh.
in a sense. And it's funny because I've learned in writing for these different publications, they all have different sort of styles,
A
right?
hundred
You
percent.
mentioned journalists, they have different styles. So I've sort of fit my writing sometimes to those specific
A
styles,
hundred
which is
percent. A
interesting.
hundred percent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's one standard for journalism. It's called AP
Mm,
style, Associated Press
mm,
style. So instead of writing the number one, the number one thing that I'd like to do, instead of spelling out number, you write NO, capital NO period, and then
yeah.
one. State names are all very specific now, and you now spell them out. You used to write
Yeah.
for California, you would put like CALIF, comma, I mean, everything's sort of always changing. In terms
Yeah.
of voice, yeah, every publication has their voice.
As your own voice, yeah.
Most recently, I was writing. I mean, still writing for Channel Futures for the next month or so. But most recently, I learned that that writing style, which is obviously active. Obviously, I mean that's pretty much a given for all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But told Channel Futures or said to Channel Futures or revealed to things like that. So it's never like told me, right? It's removing the
Mm-hmm.
personal voice. Some publications allow that, but a lot of
Yeah.
publications do not. They want it to be their their branding, of course,
Their
which
brand.
obviously
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. It's my voice,
It's
but it's their brand.
Yeah, no, exactly. That I've come across that too, and it's funny because as an analyst, building my own sort of personal brand, right? I sort of have to sort of confine, not so much confined. I still am me, but
Uh huh.
I'm very conscious of the fact. Okay, I need to sort of write the title this way.
Yeah.
I need to, what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I need to spell it out in a certain way because that's this brand's voice. And speaking
Yeah.
of voice, how do you maintain your voice? No matter who you write for, how do you sort of make sure that you're injecting Moshe in everything,
I think I
in a
just write
sense?
how I speak. Like if I were having a conversation with you right now, I
Mm.
would try to be as concise as possible, and that's how I try to be in my writing. So
Yeah.
I feel like I've never had an issue with that. I mean, even as we're speaking, I'm saying I would never do that when I'm writing, so I'm more concise. But I think that's just like a human, trying
Yeah.
to understand what the next, sentence or phrase or word is, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I haven't had any difficulties at all. I was writing for a British publication in my first when I first started as a journalist, like my second publication rather,
Hmm.
and the editor was like, "Oh, you need to change it to from the U.S. spelling to the Brit." I can go both ways. I don't care. How I don't
Yeah.
normalize with an S. I usually in my personal just writing, I write with the British spelling, so it was not a big problem for me to go from that to the or from the American to the British.
Yeah.
But little things like that. And then my editor was just like, well, I don't know if it's more authentic to do the British or for the English or for the US. And so we had a bit of back and forth with that. So some of my earlier work, you'll see that it was like normalizing, and things like that. And um,
Yeah.
so I mean, you can have that kind of thing, but mostly people they're hiring you because of your voice. They're never going to say you need to significantly change your voice. And if they do,
Hmm.
I mean, it's a
Hmm.
little strange because they already, they're going to give you some tests to understand How does he
Yeah.
write? Things like that. So they will know what they're getting. They can read your work. But the biggest thing is they want to know how much of your work is actually your work,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there's an editor, right? It shouldn't be they're making significant edits to pieces. It should be pretty much ready to print with the, maybe moving around a couple of things. Maybe, oh, maybe I like this sentence more here, or maybe I would just
Mm-hmm.
change a couple of words. But no real significant work done on that front. Should not be. And that's why a
Yeah.
lot of journalists, they're called contributing editors, or, managing editor, or, what have you, because it's not just writing. It's not just writing a bunch of slop and then just like, here you go, have at it. I mean,
Yeah.
these editors, they have a lot on their plates. I mean, they're doing 65 newsletters and all kinds of ways to justify what they are doing, and trying to save their editorial teams all the time. And
Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, I think it's crazy work, because you kind of have to be kind of maybe a kind of a lunatic to do this kind of thing. I think, because it's so unstable. I mean, I was somewhere
Yeah.
for 1 year, and then this year, so it can be problematic. But once you get into a good organization and it's a good fit, it's usually relatively smooth and really nice.
Yeah. And so one thing I know about you, Moshe, is that you are a musician. And how does sort of, I guess, being a musician, does it impact or influence your work at all in your writing? And what's the synergies there, if any?
Well, I've been working from home for, wow, a long time, way before the pandemic, which
Mm.
I think is so much better. Sorry, I don't know if that was my email or yours, but I tried to turn it off. um,
You're still working, is this
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
Look, I work from home, man, so it's great. Yeah, it was mine, I think. I'm sorry. So I get to go just to the living room,
Mm.
power up my mixer and just jam, and I get to dance, man. Um,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's like the best thing in the world. I don't even need to go to a club. I mean, I love going to a club, but I'm getting older now, so it's better to do it in the house. I've got instruments all around me. I'm looking at various instruments. I have my violins. I have a guitar. I have
Mm.
um, so many other things. They're on my desk because in the middle of, I'm just like,
Yeah, yeah.
all right, 20-minute break, just play around a bit. So, and that's another thing I did study in university. So I've always been musical. Uh, I think without music, I probably wouldn't be as creative as I am.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I probably wouldn't have as open of a mind as I do in terms
Indeed.
of when I'm writing. And I mean, when I'm not writing, my wife, she always laughs because I'm always just like making fart noises and being stupid. And she, I mean, it's great.
I love
I
it.
mean, if we,
I
this
love
is,
it.
I say you're not old until you die. And so
Yeah,
my
yeah.
goal is to never grow up, because that's one of my mentors. He always said, "Man, the worst thing you can do is grow up." So,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he's in his 80s now. So,
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because my dad, I grew up, my dad was a jazz musician.
uh-huh.
And I mean, he played other things, but I grew up, him going into New York City, for even doing voice lessons. And I used to go to gigs with him and rehearsals. Probably places that as a 7-year-old I probably shouldn't have been. I'm just saying, it's New York City, baby. It was
It's all
wild
good.
times. It was wild times. But I remember I mean, his music to him was, I mean, it was spiritual. It was something
Yeah.
that was so core to him. I remember he would change, tune his bass, and he's talking about he's like he would tune it based on the vibration, how he was feeling. Everything was
Uh-huh.
always about feel and
Yeah.
vibe, especially with bass, right? Always all about
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
and vibes with him. And I remember sometimes him being on stage, at a gig, and my dad's he's pretty, kind of calm dude,
Yeah.
actually an engineer as well too. He gets on that stage, man, and
Totally different.
that thing hits him, and he's jumping up and down, he's grooving. I mean, he is a different animal. He's
You
just
said it.
all, yeah.
You said it. Groove, man. I mean, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what the bass is. The bass is. I mean, if we're just gonna go there, just let me have that moment.
Go for
That's
it.
it, man. The bass is. I mean, people use that word all the time, but as a musician, groove is not just something very. It's not casual. It's a very sexy
Yeah.
thing. Groove is. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, man. It's just like I don't trust anybody who can't dance. I'm sorry. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. It's hard for me because
I love it.
um,
Yeah.
I think, I mean, I can't, blame somebody's, non-rhythmic capabilities, or hold that against them. But Man, it's difficult to be friends with a person like that, or even
Yeah,
work with
dance.
a person like that, because at the end of the day, we're human. We need to let loose. We need to relax.
Yeah.
And that's
That,
that's what I've seen a lot of those industry events. By the way, I've gone to a lot of those events. I'm going to go to WebEx One. And are you going, by the way?
so funny. So I end up having something come up, so I'm not gonna be able to make. I was supposed to go, but I won't be able to make. Oh, so I'm gonna miss you, man. Miss you,
Sadly,
yeah,
but it's okay.
yeah.
I'll see you probably in the next year someplace.
Mm-hmm.
Those people, they know how to let loose. They just, I mean, there's an
Yeah.
incredible amount of drinking, but beyond the drinking, there's a lot. I think there's just a lot of
That
people just
that
like,
helps some people get loose too.
yeah, I think so. Some people can actually dance, so it's great. But I've enjoyed that kind of thing, in the industry, that people are not just sort of like, I don't wear a suit and tie. I never have, and I don't care
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that. I used to have long dreadlocks, and before I cut my hair, 5 years ago now, I was still employable, right? I mean,
yeah.
nobody can tell
I'm
me.
still employable.
I mean, it's just such a ridiculous thing. I mean,
Yeah,
your
yeah.
hair's not professional. Well, that's just like closeted racism. I mean, I think that's just like,
Mm,
I mean, it's not even closeted. It's just like, it's not professional. Well, who
yeah, yeah.
sets the standard for that? I mean, if that's the standard that you're trying, I'm good. I don't want to
Exactly.
work with you. Yeah.
Now, it's funny, man. You talk about groove and applying that even back to the journalism, that writing groove that we get in that groove of our own voice and how we sort of
Yeah.
internalize what we're doing in writing, especially in tech. One of the things in tech is that I've learned to, and you just said it perfectly, to not make myself invisible who I am, right? So like I
Yeah.
came up, yeah, I love hip hop, I love Wu Tang, I love this. Like let
100%.
let all of who I am be in what I'm doing. Whether it's my writing and my whatever. Let all of who I am be in because that's
100%.
where you get the best of me.
You're
And
going to
if
love
I
it.
can be myself, you're gonna get the best of me, right?
Yeah. I'm going to love it. You're going to love it. It's going to be mutually beneficial and great for the both of us, because I'm going to be
Exactly.
at like my tip top 100% performance. I'm not going to,
Yeah.
of course, I'm human. I'm going to make a mistake here and there, but that's what growth is all about for me. And I think, and where you're not growing, you're
Mm-hmm.
not challenged, and you're going to quickly dissipate from
Indeed.
that. I mean, you're not going to be able to sustain that because you're not happy. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
not challenged, for me, if I'm not challenged like intellectually,
Yeah.
it's just, I mean, there's no point. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
So how do you maintain that? I guess with your journalism and how you approach it
Well, I
to
think the
keep
thing
that to keep
about
challenging yourself. Yeah.
unified communications, I'm covering unified communications and collaboration from a now channel perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's so many nuances. I learned so many things about the channel in this past year, and I had done some channel work before, but I was a little bit more intimidated by it. I didn't understand it, honestly. I
Yeah.
tried to, and now I do understand it. I've worked with these people, and so, I mean, I did lose sight of your question. I'm sorry, my brain is just like it's everywhere.
No, I'm saying it's like how do you maintain, I guess, keeping yourself challenged in
Okay.
this field?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not difficult because it's just so much. It's
Yeah.
just so much. I mean, it would be real difficult to imagine a day where I would be bored if I'm writing, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
getting paid to do it. That's the best part. Yeah.
Absolutely. I know because today I think tomorrow the Zoomtopia is going on. Is conference is going on. We mentioned WebEx, and so you're covering all these vendors. The Cisco's, the Cisco WebEx, the Zooms. The Ring Centrals,
Uh-huh.
and all these guys. And what are you seeing as sort of the changing landscape as you're covering these different vendors?
AI has changed everything, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody's doing it. Everybody's going to continue to do it. Those, that's a beat a dead horse conversation for me. The
Mm-hmm.
AI thing, obviously, but I think some of these models are like becoming obsolete. I mean, you see how UCAS has changed so
Yeah.
incredibly much, and UCAS is basically CCAS now. I mean,
It's merged, right?
right?
It's
I mean,
yeah. It's all
there's
a
no
blur at
real
this point.
exactly. I mean, you can distinguish between the two, but you can't really have one without the other now. So
Exactly.
sorry, go ahead.
No, you're right, and it's something that I've been covering in my coverage as well too. As I look at the digital workplace, I sort of try to things. I shared this with you doing this report. Where I'm charting it out is like, okay, if I liken it to a compass and use that metaphor, right? And if north is employee experience and east is customer experience and
Mhm.
south is business operation, and then I have west is like sort of the adaptive learning and a learning and adaptation with AI
Yeah,
and analytics. You need all of that together to form a functioning workplace, where you're
yeah,
focusing on EX and CX, right?
yeah. And I mean, and that's what I've seen is that merger really happen in real time. I mean, I started covering this stuff like 8 years ago, and so when
Yeah.
it was just unified communications, and then CX came into it, and then it was EX with things like workplace, which don't exist anymore. But you can see things like that become obsolete because
Yeah.
it's already built into. You don't need a separate platform for that, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
it
Yeah.
needs to be all one platform with different sorts of even the same UI, but like a different tab where it says like, oh, here's for the employees, here's for customer facing, here's for whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just a simple unified experience that needs to be able to do everything, and
Yeah.
it still baffles me. I mean, I know why Microsoft is so successful, rather, but I
Oh, yeah.
mean, they don't. It's just one of the most basic things. They don't even offer it like out of the box calling, So it's
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because I look at people like Microsoft and those vendors that sort of even Zoom now.
yeah,
There's another Z vendor, Zoho, right,
uh
based in
huh,
India, but vendors who had realized, okay, if we can begin to offer more pieces to offer that unified experience, if we can sort of have a platform that's more unified, that has a bunch of all the things that people need for their work, right?
100%.
Then you have a little bit more stickiness, right? And so that's where we see a
Yeah,
lot of vendors now trying to add adjacencies. Okay, we need to add this and add that because it's like,
yeah,
how do you sort of provide more of that unified experience and be flexible enough to plug into where people are?
yeah. Well, I think another thing I've seen is that these companies are realizing that you're not going to beat them. You
Yeah.
need to join them. So you need to integrate with Microsoft. You need to integrate with Zoom because that's
Mm-hmm.
where their customers already are. Nobody's using, respectfully, nobody's using Ring Central as their entire,
Yeah. Yeah.
front end, back end, communications or phone system. It's through Microsoft or it's through Zoom. Well, they
Mm-hmm.
might
Mm-hmm.
have some APIs they're using from Ring Central
Indeed. Yeah.
or Vonage or something like that because that's the kind of thing they do, or even a Twilio. But I mean, I don't think anybody's just building unless you're super heavily developer based. You're not doing stuff like that. So yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's that realization that's been really
Absolutely.
interesting as
Absolutely.
well.
So, what's the future of tech journalism? Where do you think we're going?
I mean, for sure, I don't know anything, but I definitely think a lot more AI conversations, and then
Mm-hmm.
but I think there needs to be a little bit more critical AI conversation, not just this AI feature is cool. Like there really needs to be, and there are a lot of like nonpartisan or non-vendors who are doing stuff like
Mm-hmm.
research like that to understand the potential effects of if you're leveraging public data sets. Well, that's
Mm-hmm.
pretty wide ranging, right? So that can create a lot of things, hallucinations, etc. I think we're going to
Absolutely.
have to really we're already seeing this happen. Not
Oh, indeed.
exactly like
Yeah.
a major proliferation or anything, but yeah, for sure we're seeing it. So I think it will happen in greater numbers. More lawsuits, more
Mm-hmm.
things like that, because quite frankly, people don't know how to fully leverage this thing. Where it's like the what is it, the 10,000 pound? Oh, it's this expression I can't think of it right now, um, but it's just like it's just really such a massive idea that we don't really know
Indeed.
how to wrap our heads around yet. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that's one area where we're going to see a lot of changes, and I think we're going to see more consolidation, as we've spoken about for the past couple of
Indeed.
years, and vendor consolidation, a
Yeah. Yeah.
lot more acquisitions, and a lot more layoffs. That is very very prevalent. I mean, everybody we're restructuring. You're laying
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
off. That's okay.
Yeah. Basically.
It's okay. I mean, you can
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
say it however you want to say it.
Exactly. It's
At the end of the day, it's a layoff, right? I mean, and here's the reasoning that you're
exactly.
giving me. I respect it. I'm going to publish it, of course, but I mean, just on a human level, you're just laying people off. Like, I mean,
Yeah. And it's
yeah,
always around holiday time, right?
it is. It is. It is. But
Always around little holidays.
it's always about balancing the books.
Yeah.
Especially after an acquisition. I mean, it happened with I don't want to say anything wrong, so I don't want to like get anybody in trouble. LiveVox, the LiveVox acquisition
Yeah. Yeah.
from Nice, and I mean that they had layoffs. I think Avaya had layoffs recently. Other companies in the UCC space
Mm-hmm.
had layoffs, so that's never going to change.
Yeah. Yeah. Nature of the beast. Marsha, thanks so much, man. This has been great. This is sort of one topic I want to talk about a lot, but and you're the perfect person to talk to about tech journalism and where the industry's going. We talk a lot. You've used me as a source. And it's funny
100%.
when you've used me as a source. A lot of times it's it's also learning for me because
Yeah.
it makes me sometimes think about something in a different way. So it's
Yeah.
been really helpful to me. So it's almost selfish when you reach out to me. Oh, I kind of
Uh-huh.
get my thoughts right around something that I need to get my thoughts right around. So
Uh-huh.
it's been great.
Because chances are, if I'm reaching out to you about it, other people are curious about it at that moment, and
Exactly.
you're going to be talking about it eventually soon, or already have been talking about it at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, thank you so much. And thanks
Thank
everyone for
you.
joining us. It's been great. Thank you, man.